Hello, welcome to the State Politics Podcast. My name is John Deedy, Professor of Political Science at the Community Colleges of Baltimore County. Today, I am interviewing a recent candidate for Baltimore County State's Attorney, Lauren Lipscomb. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Glad to do it. My first question is this. Why are you running for Baltimore County State's Attorney? And tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Lauren Lipscomb. I am a career prosecutor. I've been with the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office for pretty much my entire career coming out of law school. And over the past couple of years, I've actually been a Baltimore County resident since for the last 15 years. And then prior to that, I actually came to school up here in Baltimore County back in 1986. And so I am a born and raised Marylander and a proud Baltimore County resident. In terms of why I'm running for office, one of the things that the 2022 election showed us was that Baltimore County is ready for change. Baltimore County is ready to move forward. And there was not only do we have the incumbent who is running, but there was a challenger who came very close to unseating the incumbent who's been in office since 2006. One of the problems with that kind of continuity, there are a lot of positives, but one of the issues and the challenges are how do you keep things moving forward? And what we're seeing is that crime is increasing, quality of life crimes in particular is increasing, juvenile crime is increasing. We've got a situation now where I think that the residents of Baltimore County, myself included, are ready to move forward and to move into the next phase and advance the prosecution model that is currently in the Baltimore County State's Attorney's Office is something that is more advanced and more reflective of today's expectations by the communities that we serve.
What do you think is the biggest issue in this campaign that you really want to focus on and let people know that this is your North Star?
Sure. Actually, I think that post-trial prosecution is one of the biggest issues that should be first and foremost in most people's thoughts. What I mean by that is that I am also a member of the community, and I wonder when we hear about these high-profile crimes that are committed and we find out that the person is on probation or is on parole, a lot of us community members are wondering, wait a minute, well, if they're on probation and on parole, how are they out and able to commit new crimes? Why are they allowed to be out and committing new crimes? And that is an area that is not focused on very heavily by any prosecution office, I think, actually, except for Baltimore City. And I think that in particular in Baltimore County, we need to advance our model of prosecution to understand that after the gavel, the case is not over. We still owe to the victims and witnesses and the safety of our community. We still owe them the same level of service, the same level of public service to ensure that the community remains safe even after the gavel. So, for example, when someone is on probation, if somebody commits a new crime, we need to be ready to say, all right, then it's back to prison. You cannot be out in the community committing new crimes when you're on probation. That's it.
Makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Yes.
My next question is one of the biggest issues that has been talked about, not just in Baltimore County, but really statewide, nationwide, et cetera, is the issue of juvenile crime. And part of the problem I often say is you have people committing crimes that have underdeveloped brains. How do you deal with the issue of juvenile crime from a perspective of prosecution, et cetera?
So I think that we're all collectively frustrated by juvenile crime. It is out of control. It is something that every time I feel like each week we are confronted with different crimes that are committed by juveniles against the community. I was saddened to read about a story of a family's son who was beaten up by a bunch of juveniles out in the Essex area a few months back on his way to school. It's it's something that I think that we are all grappling with, from car thefts to violent offenses. It's out of control. What I will say is that it is a very, very complex issue, because when addressing juvenile crime, we have to determine what are the best solutions at each stage of the criminal justice process. So it's not just charging, but it's also at trial and then after trial. So what is very important is that at the charging level, we determine whether or not, when we back up to the charging position, we need to hold steadfast in understanding that, yes, the juvenile brain is not as developed as necessarily an adult brain. However, there still has to be accountability. There just has to be accountability. If that means that we are looking for ways to hold guardians or parents accountable, if they're on notice that their juvenile has been acting out violently, has committed numerous crimes, if it's possible legally to hold a guardian or a parent accountable, we need to do it, because this has got to stop. And juveniles do need to be held accountable. We cannot abandon accountability when we are having discussions about juvenile justice. We just can't.
What do you think is the best deterrent when it comes to crime?
So it's interesting that you would ask that. We've gone through so many iterations of this in the criminal justice field. We've gone through the 80s and 90s, which are, tough on crime, war on drugs. We've developed and advanced so much as a criminal justice system since that time period. And there are actually 4 tenets of sentencing, and that would be deterrence, punishment, rehabilitation, and remediation. Excuse me. Yep. So when we're talking about deterrence, one could make an argument that a stiff prison sentence is a deterrent. And it can be, and it should be, under the right circumstances. When we're talking about violent offenses, when we're talking about violence against the community, absolutely. You do a crime where you're harming a community member, you're going to do the time. That's the end. However, there are nuances and there are different scenarios depending on what kind of case that you're talking about. The punishment has to be fair and just. It has to be fair and just, and it has to be commensurate with whatever the crime is. And so when you ask about deterrence, it's going to really depend on what crime we're talking about. At the beginning, middle, and end of the consideration for a prosecutor, we need to be concerned with the victims and the community that we are sworn to protect. Those are the most important groups of people that we need to be concerned about when we're considering any sort of sentence. And even deterrence, rehabilitation, or punitive measures, whatever we're talking about, we need to be primarily focused on victims and the community we serve and keeping the community safe.
If you were to be elected state's attorney, who would be your role models as far as previous prosecutors you've worked for or various prosecutors, et cetera, locally or nationally?
Oh, interesting. I like that. There are so many. As I said, I've been doing this now for about 20 years as an ASA, and then I was in the office for 2 years as a law clerk. And so I've had the benefit of working alongside and for some incredible role models, both within our office as well as across the state. And in my most recent role as a supervisor in the office, I'm the lead of I am a supervisor lead for one of the divisions in the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office, and I've had the privilege of training and presenting across the nation, actually, on various conviction integrity issues. And so I think that there would be way too many to name. However, what I would like to say is that over the last couple of years, under the leadership of State's Attorney Bates in Baltimore City, there has been a remarkable reduction in the crime level. We have, under his leadership, we are experiencing a dramatic shift in the positive. And I would say that I think that the initiatives that he has implemented are directly to thank for the crime reduction that we are experiencing now in Baltimore City. We haven't reached the point yet where there's no crime, and so of course we are all employed. We're all employed, but I think that it's something that really should be said loud and far, that State's Attorney Bates has done an incredible job of leading our office, not only internally to turn morale around, which of course obviously impacts the ability that we have as an office to effectively fight crime and to uphold our obligation to protect the public and keep the public safe. But there are definitely different initiatives that State Attorney Bates has spearheaded that I think are really driving crime down. Yes.
What would be the biggest change you would make to the current Baltimore County State's Attorney's Office that Scott Schellenberger isn't doing right now?
So there are two. The first is that there needs to be, when I am elected and when I become the Baltimore County State's Attorney, if the voters will have me, within 100 days, I would initiate, create, and develop a post-trial unit. And the post-trial unit would be a centralized unit that would house all of the various post-trial motions, all of the various post-trial prosecution matters and collateral matters that are right now being treated ad hoc. And it is to the disadvantage of the community that we serve. So that's number one, a formalized, cohesive, and strong, with trained prosecutors, post-trial unit. As well, I would absolutely make sure that the office advances into present day in terms of data collection and in terms of transparency. It is incredibly important for the general public to be able to access data about what is going on in the prosecutor's office in terms of as just a measurement of, like, for example, our funding. We need to, the Baltimore County Council needs to be aware of what some of these data figures are in order to determine whether or not the budget is appropriate for the State's Attorney's Office. And I plan to fight on behalf of the staff of the State's Attorney's Office to ensure that the salaries of all staff members, that's support staff included, are fair. I plan to help advance the office to a point where data is prioritized so that we are able to evidence the work that we've done.
Last question I'll ask is, one of the most important things for any prosecutor's office is to have a good relationship with local police. What would you do to try to improve that? But also, what would you do to try to perhaps gain the FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police's endorsement in the campaign?
So working with it is non-negotiable. The relationship that the prosecutor's office has with the police department is something that needs to be non-negotiable. We need to be working together and collaboratively. That is not to be confused with we will always see eye to eye. I've been a prosecutor for a very long time, and we are not going to always see eye to eye on particular cases. However, we certainly need to complement one another in terms of our shared desire to make sure that the communities that we serve are safe. To that end, it is important not to take actions that irresponsibly undermine the police department to undermine the police department and the jobs that they have to serve the public.
I want to thank you again for appearing on this podcast, and I wish you well on the campaign trail.
Thank you so much.